Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Made Fitz Show. So I'm super excited. I think we have a really kind of like dynamic trio going on in this podcast because normally I'm outnumbered by doctors, which makes me feel really But today we have, I'm going to just call him a protein expert, but he is so much more than that. And I got to speak with Angelo before this podcast, and we had a conversation, a great conversation. And I told him where I had heard about his product was from a very, very good friend of mine. Her name is Danielle Natoni. I don't know if she listens to my podcast or not, but her and her husband are so stinking picky about the supplements that they choose. And I had saw on her social media how she was using these products. And so that was my first introduction. So I instantly knew without a shadow of a doubt that this product line was incredibly clean and good for you. And then I got a great email about having Angelo, who is co-CEO of this company, on the podcast. And I was like, well, absolutely. And so we're going to talk all things protein and above and beyond that as well. But when you look at me and my demographic, someone who's 50 years old with a Muppets t-shirt on, someone who's 50 years old, and helping women, stay strong, keep their muscle mass, keep their weight at a comfortable level, energy levels high. And then we've got Dr. Lauren on here, who helps patients in all spectrums of life. And something her and I both have in common is how important protein is at this stage in life and on the journey that Dr. Lauren takes her patients through. And so to have Angelo here on the call with us, I think is going to be really inspiring. And you're going to love him. He's a cool guy. So he was, I don't know if you know this, Lauren, he was raised in Austin, Texas. So Texan.
Oh, I'm a Longhorn. I went to
UT. Go Longhorns.
Yes. Happily married with 2 children. He has an amazing story of not only being the CEO of this company and his love for yoga, fitness, nutrition, but he also has this huge scare that he had at the age of 16 that I've asked him to share, because I think that just kind of dives into his character a little bit and how much he values the quality of life. So Angelo, it's such an honor to have you on this podcast. If you would please start and just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background.
Well, thanks, Melissa, and thanks, Lauren. I'm really happy to be here, and it was a big intro. So I hope I can meet those expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the intro as protein expert. I'm really passionate about protein and amino acids, the things that make up proteins, and why they can be so helpful for really all ages of people and genders, and just the amazing impact it can have people's lives. And it really started at a really young age for me. I was raised in a very hippie natural health food supplement family in Austin, Texas. I was born in a little town called Wimberley outside of Austin at home. And I was sharing with Melissa, I think, I didn't get a haircut until I was, I think, like 9. I didn't get a birth certificate till I was 7. Like, I was raised like at home with very natural health food parents. But they were also very educated, and I think really knew what they were doing in lots of ways. And while they chose to be pescatarians, which meant that we didn't eat as wide a variety of protein sources, we talked a lot about protein nutrition as a family at home. Like, I actually knew that I needed to combine different beans and rice, or beans and different types of grains, to get a complete protein in a meal. I knew why I needed to make sure I was eating eggs every day. And we talked about these things. And even to the extent of my parents being into amino acids at that age, my mom would give me amino acids. She would take them more typically like around exercise periods, but she would actually give them to me as well. And so, I have that super early experience. And really all of that, I'm having a very focused whole food diet, having a family that's really into fitness, but that's also really into trying to find, supplemental options for health over potentially trying to use drugs or something else to live a better life. When you're little, you don't really know how your values maybe are distinct, right? You just you grow up with what your parents teach you and you do that. And then I started going to school and I was like, oh, we're definitely kind of weird. I'm going to school with vegetables and whole food meals, and other kids are eating Gushers and stuff, and fruit roll-ups. Yep. And I think I recognized it and I appreciate it. But as I got older, probably more of the entrepreneurial spirit of my parents started to come out, which was, I had to learn everything on my own and do I was just very not traditional. I did well in school, but I was alternative, and I just wanted to push every boundary and learn everything on my own. And unfortunately, when you get into high school and you start getting more freedom and autonomy, and the social circles of young, adolescents kind of grouped together, drugs start getting introduced, and sex, and like all these other very exciting, stimulating things. And I was down for it. And so, I think I got in a lot of different trouble, but really one of the pinnacle experiences of trouble and scare was when I was 16. I took too much LSD, way too much. And I had, some form of, I think later would be considered like psychotic break. Was very scared, very frightened. I was unfortunately not in a very good neighborhood. I was annoying to a group of other young individuals who are much more hardcore than me. And they stabbed me twice in the back. They stabbed me in the knee. So I had to have emergency abdominal surgery. My spleen was barely nicked. I was very, very lucky. But my patellar tendon was entirely severed and had to be reattached. And then I was beaten. I mean, as badly as you can imagine someone getting beaten, to where you're just black and blue and left in this drainage ditch. And so, I woke up several days later in the hospital. Obviously, it's very frightening to my parents. Later I was diagnosed with PTSD, but just the combination of anyone who's had some type of very significant physical trauma or significant psychological trauma with something like drugs or otherwise, it's a lot for a 16-year-old. And it was a very profound introduction to, I think, adulthood, to I am responsible for all my own decisions. And whether I choose to do something or not do something, there's going to be repercussions for that. And so, like, what is the life that I want to create? And from that, I mean, there were a lot of different, longer term impacts around like career decisions. But I think at an initial period, it was like, I want to heal myself. I want to be healthy. And so a passion for health was awakened in me that was distinct from just my parents telling me this is what we do and this is what you should do. And at that time, it was lots of things. It was, doing different types of cold and heat exposure, I think really helped me with my nervous system, acupuncture, a lot of physical fitness. Yoga is when I first started getting into yoga and meditation, but also around nutrition, really thinking about whole food nutrition in a new way, and about protein and how the role that protein would play in me trying to gain back some of my muscle, to help repair my knee, to just get fit again. And and that journey, I'm still on that journey. I'm 40 now, so it's 24 years ago. I'm still on that journey. But, I went a lot of different ways after that. Then I became very, very passionate about school and did very well in school. And it led to me being able to pursue a career overseas. So I got to move to France and got to move to India and did a lot of different interesting things. And, but ended up, back in the States, working in health. And then ultimately in 2017, I don't really know how to say it other than like I just came back to my roots and founded this supplement company that it's not about trying to do something really fancy or really new or special or different. It's like, hey, what are the core fundamental supplements that like I want to take every day, that I think my family should take every day, that have decades of science behind them, and that really work? And then how do you make those really well and provide education for people, going to podcasts like this and just help educate people? And I feel really, just lucky and blessed that I can tell a story with that level of darkness in it, and that, I ended up, getting to be here with you guys today.
Yeah. I was going to say, not to mention, he's multilingual. So
Impressive.
it is. I think that's so impressive.
So I used to be an anesthesiologist, and I had a unique perspective because I would get to see patients when they had their health taken away from them. And oftentimes young people don't realize how valuable their health is, because the predicament that you got in, you got to have a look into what it would be like if your body didn't work the way it's supposed to. And most young people don't get to have that, near-death experience. I mean, you really did have a near-death experience. And too often people don't have that realization of like, this is the thing that we need to value the most. And they don't realize it until decades have gone by of abuse. And then it's almost too late. So you were I like to see the cup is half full. You were fortunate enough to survive that and come out not just a victim. You were not a victim. In fact, you were a victor, and you gained your health back. And I'm guessing you're pretty freaking healthy at 40 years old, right?
Well, thanks for that reflection. Yeah. And I think in some ways, another way I look at it too is they're like doses of time. And oftentimes someone that young, like they simply haven't had the experience. It's like I got dosed with like 20 or like 30 years of experience all in one night. And then I had to unpack it, over time. But it exposed me to the fragility of my body that many people don't experience until they're mid 40s, and they're like, oh gosh, I can't do this thing I used to be able to do, or like, wow, it's much harder to get into the shape, or yeah. So yeah, it has definitely remained well, I don't know if that experience remained a motivating factor for me, but for some reason I continue to care about my health a lot.
Absolutely. So
Absolutely.
2017, you decided to create this company. And I'd heard about, before we started hitting record, I told you that I've heard about Kion because I'm a Ben Greenfield fan. So I've been listening to his podcast for quite a few years now, and I was very familiar. I think that there's a level of trust that when someone who has consistently provided good quality content online that is in the health and wellness space, when they come with a product, I automatically trusted it. I automatically knew it's got to be a top tier line of supplements. So where you said I wanted to create products that my family and I would take. So where'd you start with that?
I mean, honestly, it really does start with things like amino acids. It took us a couple of years to come up with a protein, but amino acids, I think, are one of the first things to start with. And it's because of really the fundamental role that they play in the body and the unique advantages that they actually have over things like protein powders or whole food proteins.
Please expand on that. I know the listeners are like, okay, give us
like,
the goods.
Well, I think the first thing to start with is just unpacking what protein is and explaining that and making sure we're all on kind of the same page. So protein is one of the three macronutrients. So there's micronutrients, things like vitamins and minerals, and the macronutrients are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. The thing is, protein is very distinctly different from carbohydrates and from fat. The primary role of carbohydrates and fat in our diet is energy. So when we consume them in, whatever source, it could be whole food like potatoes and steak, potatoes being more rich in carbohydrates, steak being more rich in protein, or Oreos, right? There's fats and there's carbohydrates in that. What happens is when we consume them, they basically get converted into an energy in our body that we can use, ATP. And I think a simple way of thinking about this is if we think about our body as a house, to run the dishwasher, the laundry machine, the lights, the stereo, you need energy. And so you buy that energy, you get that energy from an electrical grid, or maybe you have solar panels, or you could even use natural gas to run your stove. That's like another form of energy. Or if, let's say you went out of power because of a storm, maybe you have a generator and you burn gasoline. All of those are different kind of raw ingredients that get converted inside your house as energy. So think about carbohydrates and fat as like those different types of outside energy sources. So they're clearly really important. Like if you don't get these key sources of energy, you can't run your house, you can't run your body. A protein is very fundamentally different, though. It can be used as an energy source, but it basically has to get converted into a carb-like structure in order to be used as energy. Instead, what protein does is it's more like the actual materials that make up our house. And in the same way that our house breaks down over time. So if you walk, if you have carpet in your house and you walk over that piece of carpet over and over and over and over and over and over again, eventually the carpet starts to wear out and you need to replace it. That could be the same thing for tile. It could be for doorknobs. It could be for a sink, a toilet, all these different things. Our body is actually the same. So our body is made up of proteins. So in the same way that we eat protein, our body is actually made up of proteins. And what part of our body is made up of proteins? Over half of the physical solid mass is. So that's all of not only your lean muscle, but that's things like your vital organs, your heart, your kidney, your liver, your spleen, as well as other things like your skin, hair, nails, and things that maybe don't intuitively seem like physical structure to folks. Things like enzymes and hormones. These are actually made up of proteins. And these proteins in our body, similar to say the materials that make up the carpet or the other parts of your house, they don't last forever. And what actually happens is a protein starts to get old in a sense. And when it gets too old, it breaks down. And when it breaks down, like I'll just give an example. If I look at my arm and I look at my skin on my arm, I know like it's actually made of millions of proteins. And each one of these little proteins, when it gets old, what's going to happen is it's going to break down. I won't see it, but it's going to break apart. And the things that make up that protein are amino acids. And those amino acids, those 20 amino acids that make up protein that say makes up skin tissue, some of them can actually be reused. So maybe similarly, like if you're in your house and you want to redo your bathroom and you're like, well, actually like the tile is actually still good. We can reuse the tile, but we got to change the toilet, right? The tile you can reuse. So similarly, some of these amino acids can be reused. Some of them cannot though. And the ones that cannot, because they're too old, they're not functional enough, we actually pee them out. They get converted to urea and we pee them out. So now we're in the state where this one little protein in my skin broke apart. Some of the amino acids are still good and can get reused to actually build a new protein. And some are not, and they're peed out. So I'm missing amino acids. That is why you eat protein. When you eat chicken breast, quinoa, there's actually complete protein in potato, so potatoes as well, beef, any of these different things. When you eat these sources and you digest that protein in your digestive system, you break it apart. The amino acids inside go into your blood, they get distributed throughout your body, and they get reused, they get utilized to rebuild old proteins. So from just a fundamental standpoint, protein and the amino acids in protein are the building blocks of our actual body and the way that we like manifest as creatures, not less as like an energy source, like the way that carbohydrates and fat work. So laying that groundwork.
Great example.
Why are amino acid, why would an essential amino acid supplement be potentially so important? Like, why would you start a company with like that? That's a good idea. So
Angela, can just really fast interrupt you because I know my followers right now, and they're gonna click off this podcast because they're gonna go to Kion right now. And they're going to look at what you have. I know they will. And so I just wanted to say, and I should have said at the beginning, that if you go to getkion.com/made, they're actually giving you a 20% off gift for listening to the podcast. So if you are going to click off to go see all of these wonderful things he's talking about, go to getkion.com/made to get 20% off. So you can keep going because I know them.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Melissa. So why are essential amino acids as a supplement potentially so much more effective than, say, a protein powder or a whole food protein? So the first thing I want to say is that I, first of all, endorse and would strongly recommend that people eat whole food diets, that you structure your life around eating things that are minimally processed. And that's meats, that's cheeses, that can include grains, that can include all different types of vegetables, fruits, etc. And to find the right mix for you. And without going into like how much of each macronutrient is ideal or which kind of food sources are best, I would just start there. And that's how I base my life. And that's how I encourage everyone to think about their life. Like move every day and eat whole food. That said, for specific reasons, and I would say, let's say you're aging. And so now this becomes relative to all of us, basically. After the age of 30, our ability to digest protein and utilize the amino acids in protein becomes diminished, which leads to the loss of muscle mass as we age. And so it's suddenly you're like, is there actually something more strategic I could do? Are there things that I could add to my diet that would ensure that I don't lose that muscle mass over time, in addition to strength training, et cetera? Another reason why you might think about supplementing would be, hey, I have more fat than I want on my body right now. I want to lose that fat for more optimal health, but I want to maintain my lean muscle. And when you go into a calorie deficit, which we can go into more why and how later, what happens is you don't only burn your energy stores, which are fat. Like your fat is actually energy stores for days when you maybe couldn't get food. You also burn your amino acid stores, which are your muscle. Your muscle is made up of amino acids that are for the rest of your body. You start to burn those and lose those. So it can be very unhealthy to do too aggressive of weight loss if it includes the loss of muscle in addition to fat. So again, okay, well, is there some way that like in addition to just eating good quality whole foods, I could think about supplementing in strategic ways that offer the that offer greater benefit than just trying to eat more protein. And the last major category would be performance. Like if you want to get more out of exercise, like literally actually multiply the effects of exercise and recover faster during exercise and have greater endurance during exercise and get more benefits from it, are there unique ways that you could consider supplementing instead of just only trying to eat food around it? And those are, I'd say, the three most important reasons why essential amino acids could make sense. And so for me, when I was younger, it was more about performance. And as I'm older, it's more about maintaining fitness as I age and maintaining my muscle. And that's why it would make so much sense. And even for something like my kids who are both competitive athletes, I'm trying to support them and like nurturing their bodies and not trying to be, get too broken down, et cetera. So it actually makes sense for different reasons. We might take, essential amino acids today. So how exactly is it that the essential amino acids would be more effective? Well, when we consume protein, there's this thing that happens called the stimulation. It's called muscle protein synthesis. So you're stimulating muscle protein synthesis. And all that means is that new proteins in your muscle get made. So in the simplest terms. But different types of protein sources stimulate more or less amounts of muscle protein synthesis.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the degree to which you stimulate muscle protein synthesis is directly related to the peak concentration of essential amino acids in your blood. So if you get a higher concentration of the essential amino acids in your blood all at once, you'll have a much greater increase in new muscle protein synthesis. So how do you get that? How do you get, a higher peak concentration? Well, the first thing is going to be how digestible is the protein? Meaning, and that doesn't mean like, how does it feel in my stomach when I eat it? It's like literally how good is the human body and its enzymes at breaking down that protein source and getting the amino acids out of it. So the first thing I would just point out is that in whole food sources, animal proteins are more digestible. And that's not just meats, that includes eggs and dairy. Actually, like milk has the highest score of like anything. So it's highly digestible in that way. That doesn't mean that plants aren't good, but they're just simply not as digestible. Then the next question would be, okay, well, what's the proportion of the essential amino acids in that protein? And the big idea here is that when you eat a protein, and again, whether it's quinoa or it's chicken, there's a certain amount, not all proteins are the same, basically. Like, even though they're called protein, different proteins throughout nature have different chemical combinations. It's like we look at all these houses and like we call them all houses, but some are made of bricks and some are made of wood and some are made of stucco, et cetera, right? Like each different protein has different amounts of essential amino acids, and some have more or less and some have more non-essential. And here's the big point. There's 9 essential amino acids. There's 20 total. 9 of them are essential. Those essential ones are the ones that, what you might be familiar with this idea of a complete protein. It simply means that it has all 9. And so people are always telling you, oh, you need to eat complete proteins with all 9. But here's the really big point about them. Essential amino acids are not just building blocks. They're not just the materials that make up your body, like the materials that make up your house. They're like the workers that lay the new tile, the workers that install the new carpet. They have a chemical messenger component that stimulate the protein synthesis. And so the more amount of essential amino acids in the protein source, the more muscle protein synthesis you're going to get. So you want a protein that you can digest well, that is very concentrated in the essential amino acids, and that then gets into the blood and it's going to stimulate this protein synthesis. If you're looking at whole food, I mean, the other thing I'd consider too is like, what's the caloric impact? Like if you eat protein and it's covered in fat, like bacon, or you eat protein and it's covered in carbohydrates, like, rice and beans, which again, none of these things are necessarily bad, but you're eating a lot of calories to get that smaller amount of essential amino acids. But just purely for the stimulation of the muscle protein synthesis, you want to get the most amount of the essential amino acids in the blood all at once. So if I just take beef, like lean protein from beef, eating half the amount of the beef protein on its own, so it's actually slightly less, 30 grams of beef protein eaten on its own versus 70 grams of beef protein as part of a mixed meal. And 70 grams of beef protein is like a 12-ounce steak approximately. So if you eat a 12-ounce steak with broccoli and carrots and potatoes, or you eat less than half of that on its own, the less than half of it will stimulate more muscle protein synthesis than over twice the amount as eaten part of a meal. Why is that? Because it's easier for you to digest that beef on its own. It gets less mixed up with the other materials, and the essential amino acids in the beef enter the blood more quickly and hit this higher peak concentration. So
the next question is going to be, when are we supposed to eat it so we get best muscle? I mean,
but this is the thing I'd say. It's like, again, I would share overall, like just trying to share all the science, the perspective. Like I personally, I don't break apart my meals and like, well, because I like the taste of like the beef and the broccoli together. Like I like that. Right now, that said, if I'm 40, if I was 70 and I was really having problems, I might start to make more adjustments because I want every little benefit, and it's like, and training's harder for me to do now. And like, I'm trying to use my nutrition even more strategically to really improve the outcomes. Right. But like, generally, I mean, it's like, I like eating whole meals together enough that like, I just want to keep doing that. That said, I'm eating 3 whole meals a day. If I was going to add in another snack of some kind or some other type of, way to eat more protein or to stimulate more muscle protein synthesis, would I just eat another little, like, I don't know, mixed meal at some point? Like probably not. Maybe beef jerky. Well, what's even better? Well, when you take whey protein powder, gram for gram, whey protein powder has 3 times the increase in plasma EAA concentration than the beef does. So it's 3 times the impact. The same gram for gram, you're taking the same amount of protein in, but it has a way bigger impact. Why is that? It does have slightly more essential amino acids in it. It also has slightly better ideal amounts of the amino acids, but also more of the carbohydrates and fat have been stripped out of it. So you're really getting this much more isolated source. Now, so I'd be like, okay, well, like the protein powder probably makes more sense than just trying to eat like a chicken breast in mid-afternoon or something. Now, when I go and I compare essential amino acids, assuming, again, this is important, we can go into more like what's the ideal essential amino acid supplement type formula, assuming you have all 9 and you have them in the ideal ratios that are based off of basically research from NASA, NIH. Like this whole community has been researching this for the last 40 years. And there's somewhat of a consensus around what the ideal type ratio would be. Assuming that you're eating that has 3 times the impact on plasma EAA levels than the whey protein does. So what, like, how is it multiplying so much more, right? Well, here's the important point. The difference between the essential amino acid supplement and the whey protein is that the essential amino acids is only the essential amino acids. There are no non-essential amino acids in it, whereas the whey protein is slightly over half is the non-essential. And what we know is that the essential amino acids play the entire role of this stimulation. Non-essential amino acids contribute nothing to the stimulation of the muscle protein synthesis. They can be used as a building block if you don't have enough, right? From already within the body, but they don't stimulate anymore. So if you take them out and gram for gram, all you're taking is the essential, well, already you're taking twice the amount as you're taking of the whey protein. But on top of that, the essential amino acids are even more bioavailable. You don't have to digest them at all. You just absorb them and they just go into your blood. So they hit that, there's no stress on the body to try to break them down. So for someone who is younger, this is more like someone in their 20s. That's the spectrum that I'm talking about. It's like so many more times effective than say a whole food protein as part of a meal. And again, I wouldn't say don't eat the whole food meals. I'm just saying like eat a few whole food meals per day and think about supplementing first thing in the morning or mid-morning or in the afternoon and around exercise. And you'll be able to hit these way higher levels of muscle protein synthesis than you would by just trying to eat more food necessarily. But the really important point relative to aging specifically, and then I think we should talk about weight loss, which is very interesting. It is a way greater impact the older you get. Because as we age, we lose ability to digest the proteins, meaning to actually break them apart and get the amino acids out of them. But also our sensitivity to the amino acids becomes reduced. which logically makes sense. As we get older, our body's not thinking, oh, let's build and put on muscle. It's thinking more like, let's survive, right?
Right. Yes.
And so, and like maybe we can even use this as like an energy source. So like it's not trying to like maintain the super vitality of like a 20-year-old athlete, right? So when you take just the non-essential, you take just the essential amino acids in populations more like 60 years old, like 60-year-old women, the essential amino acids have 6 times the impact as whey protein. It's actually over 3 grams of essential amino acids stimulated more than 20 grams of whey protein.
Wow.
So as you age, the benefits become even greater in terms of, choosing to, take a protein powder or to eat that much more meat. So as I age, going back to your question, like you kind of asked earlier in the middle of this, Dr. Lauren, was rather than me trying to like separate up my meals, and like eat all my chicken first and then wait an hour. It's like, I just want to eat lunch when it's time to eat lunch and like have dinner with my family when it's time to eat dinner. I take essential amino acids first thing in the morning. If there's kind of like a mid-afternoon thing where like I'm feeling a little bit of a slump, but I'm like not that hungry. I don't really feel like I need a bunch more like carbohydrates and fat for like energy. But like I'm trying to build and maintain my muscle, like maybe have it then or take it before or after exercise. Like, so it's more like finding these strategic times to use it as a supplement rather than trying to maybe over-engineer the way that I eat my classical meals. Then that's not saying there's a right or wrong way. That's just my approach to thinking about this stuff.
Have there been studies to look at the benefit of before versus after working out?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Consume it.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, it's so basically the benefits of consuming essential amino acids before you work out is that the amino acids themselves, because of this increase in the plasma EAA levels, they stimulate all this muscle protein synthesis. That combined with the stimulation from the resistance exercise itself basically has a multiplying effect.
Cool.
So you get that much more impact from the exercise itself. Like you're creating more results from the exercise. You're also able to potentially reduce the muscular fatigue that you would get from exercise because you're providing so many more amino acids for the blood that when you start to over oxidize the amino acids you typically would in the blood, because it's not just for like replacing the muscles, but actually amino acids also play this role in facilitating, particularly leucine, facilitating the production of energy at the site of the mitochondria itself. So you actually oxidize amino acids in exercise, not just for energy, but to facilitate the creation of the energy. So if you have more amino acids in your blood, you could potentially not get into a situation where then you're kind of draining them all out of your blood. And that's what makes you tired and promotes more muscular fatigue. The benefits of taking them during are kind of similar to before, but not quite as good. And the benefits, although I think they make a lot of sense for endurance athletes, like for endurance athletes, like if you're going on long runs every hour, supplementing with them and not just thinking I need to supplement with carbs, or if you're fat adapted with more fat, but like you actually need the amino acids. It's not for energy. It's to actually maintain the maintenance of your muscles and the production of the energy. It makes sense to take them. The benefits of after, you get more the benefits of the recovery. So you're supporting the body in promoting more new protein synthesis, replacing the old damaged proteins from the exercise, actually limiting the amount of breakdown that's maybe potentially unnecessary from the exercise, which helps prevent as much soreness. But you also get those benefits taking it before. So in the end, I would say like if I could choose, I would say take it before. But if you like taking it after, it's still great. Like there's nothing bad about taking it after. It's just not quite as good as taking it before.
Andrew, I have two quick questions for you. The first one is because of our circadian rhythm. The research I've done shows that, we obviously our protein muscle synthesis is much higher early in the morning. Is that one of the reasons why you say you take it first thing in the morning? And the second, which might be a silly question, but it's one I think my followers might have, is why can't you just take, or why don't you create a whey protein that has the whey in it and also has the essential amino acids, or you don't take the essential amino acids and put them in with the whey protein and have it all together to get the benefits of all the amino acids, but also the double impact of having double EAs?
Two good questions. So the reason why I take it first thing in the morning is because I don't like to eat first thing in the morning. And as you get older, again, I think the younger you are, the less important this is. The older you are, the more important this becomes. The way that it works when you consume essential amino acids via protein or via supplement is that it stimulates this muscle protein synthesis. And you basically have a surplus. Now you have extra amino acids in the blood. And so you're stimulating this new muscle protein synthesis. After a few hours, that period ends. And then if you don't consume more protein or more essential amino acids, you start to go into a net protein loss. And what that net protein loss means is that, hey, there's still heart and liver and kidney and spleen tissue that needs to be rebuilt. There's still proteins for enzymes that need to be rebuilt. Where is the body getting the amino acids to rebuild these? Your muscle. You break down muscle to get the amino acids to supply the rest of your body. Now, if you go, every single night, this is happening. So it's not like a disaster. I'm not trying to encourage a pure bodybuilder, mentality for everyone. You need to be eating chicken breast every 4 hours. But when you go through extended periods without it, you're going to have a little bit of muscle loss. And so at 40 years old, when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm eating away at my potential muscle. I'd rather just right then be do the exact opposite and stimulate building and maintaining my muscle. So that's more the reason why I do try to think in my waking period, every 3 to 4 hours, having protein or having essential amino acids. And yeah, maybe it's not the best thing for me, to fast every morning doing that, but it typically works better for me. What I would just say though is I also trust and listen to my body. This morning, I woke up and I did that. And honestly, after an hour and a half, 2 hours, I was just hungry. So I made myself a small breakfast and I ate it. And then I went for a walk and I felt better. So it's it's not like there's only one way of doing it, but typically I go a few hours in the morning without eating, if not 6 or so. And then the question about why not combine it with a protein powder? So this is what I would say is that, so Kion makes a whey protein isolate that I'm very proud of and I love. It's an awesome product. I would say a whey protein isolate and an essential amino acid supplement are 2 tools to achieve similar goals, but they do them in slightly different ways and they have slightly different benefits. So if you're talking from pure stimulating the muscle protein synthesis, you don't need the whey. Just to actually if you were to take 3 servings of Kion aminos, it's between 15 and 18 grams of essential amino acids in one dose is the maximum benefit you're going to get. As low as 3 grams, as high as 15 to 18 grams. I say 15 to 18 because it was historically 15. In the last few years, they've shown actually benefit for 18. But I'd be a little skeptical for female audiences. I might be more 220-pound jack dudes that are able to use that amount. So that you're going to get the maximum benefit. So you don't need to combine it with the whey protein powder. It's on its own, it's providing all this benefit. That said, the science has also shown that if you stack the essential amino acids on top of whey protein, it does make the whey protein work even better. And in a similar way that it took me longer, I think, to accept practically. I got the science of it initially. It's just why would I do that? And maybe it's because I'm getting older. I'm I guess that really does make sense. And it took Dr. Arnie Ferrando, who's the lead author from the International Society of Sports Nutrition position paper on essential amino acids, help me understand this better, is that actually taking essential amino acids with a meal actually makes a lot of sense, particularly if you're in an anabolically resistant state, meaning you're older, or you're going through some type of chronic stress or recovery period, et cetera, because your body already is just not using the protein as well. And when you consume the essential amino acids, so that steak with the meal doesn't actually stimulate that much muscle protein synthesis. But if I take the essential amino acids, it kicks off this big new stage of muscle protein synthesis. It will better utilize the steak in the meal to actually help rebuild the protein in my muscle. So for me, it's and I'm also in a situation where I have an essential amino acid company. So but I don't want to be taking them all the time. So I don't really take them, with meals, but I do sometimes, for example, if I want to do something with my family and they want to go to the bakery on the weekend, I might take them then and then enjoy the biscuit or the ham and cheese croissant or whatever, with my kids. And so I'm actually maximizing any of the potential protein that's in that wheat, that's in that ham, that's in that cheese, that's in that ham and cheese croissant.
So this is a great segue to talk about Ozempic. So semaglutide, Wegovy, Zepbound, the incretins. So we are seeing an onslaught of muscle loss when people are using these peptides in the incorrect way, not realizing that the muscle loss that will happen if they don't eat adequate amino acids and they don't resistance train. They will lose muscle, and it will end up being a far worse outcome than what their obesity track was going to lead them to. So is it safe to say, because I have a lot of weight loss patients on semaglutide or tirzepatide, would it be safe to say that this would be an essential supplement that anyone on a weight loss journey using these peptides should be taking?
Yeah. So I think I would take a step back and describe how that happens, and then why essential amino acids make so much sense with weight loss. So anytime that you are in a caloric deficit, whether it's supported induced through a drug or it's done, through some other type of strict just behavior change, when you consume less calories than you burn in a day, then you're going to start to eat away at your fat stores. Like, that is just simply what happens, for the same reason we described earlier. Actually, when I overeat and I eat more than I need in a certain day, my body, initially healthily stores that as fat, so that like on days when I can't find food, I'm hungry, like it can live off that fat. Unfortunately, though, what happens is that when you go into a calorie deficit, your body not only starts to burn that fat, but it also in a way starts to burn your muscle. And the reason why that happens is, and let's just assume you're already eating the same amount of protein you were eating before. Like, you were already eating like what you thought was a healthy, you were actually eating an appropriate amount of protein to maintain your lean muscle. You're eating the appropriate amount of protein to eat your lean muscle. And then you cut your calories. What's going to happen is and you keep up the same amount of grams of protein that you were eating before, your body is going to suddenly be like, I'm hungry. I'm going to use that protein. And even if you're not feeling maybe the effects of hunger because you're supported through a drug, right? Your body's like, I'm going to use this protein instead. I'm going to convert it via gluconeogenesis into a sugar-like substance and use it as energy, because I'm not trying to use it to like build and maintain muscle. I'm trying to just like have something to like live off today, right? And so then what starts to happen is, well, the rest of your body still has a need for amino acids to help, rebuild skin, et cetera. So what does it do? It starts to eat away at your muscle. So that's why if you're in any type of caloric deficit, what's going to happen is you're going to start to lose that muscle. Well, how much more amino acids do you need in order to not lose any muscle in a caloric deficit? Luckily, there's actually more recent research from the last few years that has specifically studied this. And what's been shown is that a 30% caloric deficit. So let's just take, for example, your daily calories that you would consume, including your activity levels, is 2,000 calories. If you were to cut that by 600 calories per day, that's 30%, which, I think not supported through drugs, like that's pretty aggressive. It's more than a pound a week of fat, right? And I think lots of people are like, what? Like, people think they can lose 5 pounds. Like, honestly, like losing a pound or more than a pound a week, like that's disciplined, and that's pretty focused. Because 600 calories times 7 days is about 4,200 calories. And typically dietitians, nutritionists, you'll say about 3,500 calories is a pound of fat. So it's a little bit more than that. But here's what we found is that a 30% caloric deficit requires a 300% increase in daily essential amino acid intake.
Wow.
From whatever you needed before to maintain your protein balance in order to maintain your protein balance and not lose muscle. That is a lot more, right? Now, depending on how much muscle you have before, your activity levels, that might not be like the higher levels, like people get, like a gram, like maybe you need like 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, something like that. But still 3 times that amount, suddenly you are like at 2 grams, 2.1, 2.4. That's a lot of protein. And instead of trying to consume that much more protein in your diet already, when like you're not that hungry now, or even if you are hungry, but you're trying to like you're still trying to eat vegetables and fiber and like eat other things, the idea of using an essential amino acid supplement, maybe in a few times per day, could be very strategic to get those higher levels of essential amino acids and maintain your muscle. And I've actually like experienced it directly in our office. It wasn't through a drug supported weight loss journey, but a guy in my office, he's 40 years old, got a shoulder injury, but he was like wanting to lean out. He basically wanted to lose like 25 pounds. He just did very disciplined macro counting, caloric deficit, like used the app, like did it. But on top of that, consumed essential amino acids in like a couple servings, a few times per day. And after 3 months, he lost almost 25 pounds of fat and lost no muscle. And
Jeez.
he got
That's
in-body
huge.
scans throughout the whole process. So it's like, it's clear. It's like the dude didn't lose any muscle. And for many people, they'd be like, how is that possible? Like he wasn't even really exercising that much more. And it was just through diet. Well, it's like, well, it's the combination of consuming less calories. So you start to burn the fat stores and increasing your amount of daily essential amino acids so that you maintain all of your muscle. So I think regardless of whether it's you're using drugs or not, those are just kind of the rules of the way that your fat stores and your muscle stores work and the way that your body prioritizes the intake of protein or not.
I'll tell you, my brain is going all over the place because I require my patients to have a daily protein minimum. So they have to eat their ideal body weight in grams of protein a day. And this is the most common thing that they complain about. It's hard to eat that. If they're, 120, gram minimum day, oftentimes they're like, I don't know how to eat that much. I can't. Their appetite is being suppressed by the incretins. And I really feel like this might be the perfect solution for that, because it's not going to give them the filling sensation because they're already full from their food because they're on this incretin. But that might be because I always let them know muscle loss is the thing we want to avoid on this weight loss journey, whether an incretin is used or not. And so I'm thinking that might be one of my things that I add on to my weight loss patients in their journey.
And I think one thing I might add to that, that would be a good baseline though, too, is, like the RDA, the recommended daily allowance for protein, which I think in recent years has been clearly shown through protein science to not be enough, actually, is 0.4 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So, if you weighed 100 pounds, that'd be 40 grams of protein per day that you would need to eat. Like, I would definitely never go below that in food. Like, so whether you're taking drugs or not, like, you eat real food, maintain real, as much as you can, healthy behaviors around like eating whole food diets and eating real foods at mealtime. If you need to eat smaller servings, like if it takes you, you're literally eating only 15 grams of protein and you need to do it like 3 times a day because it's so filling. But like, yeah, take the 15 grams of protein, then you could consume essential amino acids in addition to that. And it could be at that same period, or it could be at other times throughout the day. So again, I would say like to try to hit those higher levels, like you're advocating. I think that's the way to think about a supplement.
A supplement. Yeah, no, yeah. They know that I always tell them, look, I want most of your protein to come from meat, eggs, and dairy. But this is where if you struggle not being able to hit that, that's when a supplement and now I'm going to be throwing in amino acids. So it's actually a perfect marriage for a lot of my patients, honestly.
And Lauren, didn't you think, I thought about my mom. Didn't you think about your parents too, when you talked about the healthy aging?
Totally.
It's get more liquids in too. I just really think that something I need my mom and my stepdad to be taking as well, because they are in their 70s and could use that protein synthesis big time.
Yeah. With my parents, it's the thing where I'm like, as much as you want, like you can take it. And literally it's been deemed safe to take up to the equivalent of 20 servings per day.
Jeez.
100 grams of supplemental essential amino acids. And like, well, I don't take that amount. And I'm like, my dad's not taking that amount, but he's in his late 70s as well. It's like, he's taking a lot per day. I'm like, man, whatever you can take it. Cause again, he's like, not even really that hungry.
Yeah.
I'm like, same thing where I'm like, any kind of weights you can lift, like 5-pound dumbbells, do it, man. Just be lifting your 5-pound dumbbells and drinking your aminos. And like, like just to maintain that muscle so that he can have an awesome 80s, like that decade can be a really good decade. And hopefully even the 90s are a good decade and they're not, fragile. Yeah. And risky,
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Lauren and Angelo, we are about out of time because Lauren has to play doctor.
I do. I do have a patient in less than 5 minutes.
I just wanted to thank you so much. Lauren can attest. Right before we got on, I said, you're going to love this guy. And I know that she does. Again, you can go to getkion.com/made. They're giving you a 20% off. So do it as soon as you hear this, because I don't know how long that will last. But Angela, where else can they find you or more information about the products that you have for the consumer?
So really, I've poured everything into Kion. I don't have some like big personal identity I'm trying to make. So really, I would just go to getkion.com and you can get all the information there. Go to the link that Melissa shared. There's a lot of resources we have on there on the blog. And if you want more than that, I mean, you can feel free to call our team. Like we actually have a live support team all the time that you can just
You have
call
an
us.
amazing team. You have an amazing team. I have never worked with somebody that is so on it and so kind and prompt. So please tell them that I have thoroughly enjoyed working with them. So when he says call customer service, he's not kidding. They are amazing.
Thank you so much for saying that. I'll make sure Ariana hears that.
Yes.
Yeah, and then another great resource, honestly, outside of Kion, is the International Society of Sports Nutrition. If you ever like, is a supplement legit? Like, how does this thing work? Like, what does it do? It's a group of academics, and they do like these big kind of meta-analysis reviews with a lot of different academics all critiquing it. They had a recent one that came out on essential amino acids in October of last year. It's a little nerdier, it's like supposedly it's
we
not
like nerdy.
Yeah,
we like nerdy.
It's a little nerdy. But they do, they have them on creatine, they have them on protein, they have them on everything. And so that's a great, if you really want to nerd out more.
All right.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Lauren?
No, you were correct. I enjoyed talking to you. I wish that we had more time, because we might have to do a part 2, because I definitely have some more questions, but I actually am going to start incorporating these products with my patients, because this is a constant problem that I've seen with my weight loss patients. So this is a nice solution for that. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, thank you.
I'm so excited that it worked.
One more thing I would add, just because of really like coming on these shows, like my hope is to provide education, and there's like no expectation any of y'all need to buy Kion products. What I would say is, if you don't follow this link and you're out there and you're trying to find the right essential amino acid supplement, look for these things, because it's really important. Number one, no proprietary formula. If you look at the essential amino acid bottle and it says proprietary formula, or it doesn't tell you the exact amount of each essential amino acid, don't buy it. Okay. Number two, it needs to have all 9 essential amino acids in it. So if it only has 8, or it only has 3, or has some other formulation, that's not it. Similarly, you don't need more. It doesn't need to have 10. It doesn't need to have arginine. It doesn't need to have citrulline. It doesn't need to have a bunch of other things. And the proportions really matter. So I would check out those Kion proportions, or dig into the literature and read the NASA and NIH studies, because the proportions really matter. Human skeletal muscle increase, but basically the proportions that are in our muscle. Then you need to increase the leucine to 40%, increase the isoleucine and the valine to maintain their close to the original proportions, and increase the lysine. You need all those things for this whole conversation we're happening. Like if you get inspired and then you're like, forget Kion, you're looking somewhere else. Like you do need, the literature is this formulation and that literature. So just make sure you look for that.
I appreciate that very much. Well, thank you, Angelo. We really appreciated talking to you and are excited to incorporate some Kion into our lives.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Dr. Lauren.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Angelo.
Always, you guys. We hope you wake up feeling prepared and go to bed feeling proud. Have a great day. Wow, we've reached the end, but before we leave you, we'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion, and to us, your opinion does matter.
Now, the content in this episode is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.